at a percentage of about 98%. It's been a unanimous yes vote. The focus now is on building a new country. After years of devastation and civil war, what are the priorities? The priorities now at this stage is the infrastructure. And then, of course, managing the expectation of the people. For over 25, now it's almost 27 years, they have all been saying, okay, if we get our own independent state, we need everything right now. Yeah. So the reprioritization must put into consideration what we have in terms of capacity, in terms of our economy, building an economy, but the economy that will be matching the expectation of the people without necessarily being too fussy about it, because if you end up doing that, you may actually miss a lot of things. A prelude to economic management obviously is getting a well-functioning government bureaucracy and administrative system. What's being done? In fact, from tomorrow, that is 15th, the political leadership of South Sudan, all the political parties are meeting in Juba. A roadmap has been made already. That roadmap is very interesting. One, we will have to have a transitional government, which on the 9th of July will be formed. Its function is to first rebuild or rework the constitution so that it fits with new reality, what kind of political system we need, and most importantly, have a new census, and then you have a transitional assembly, elections, and so on. That would mean the shape of the new government will have to be done within the next 3 years. And the final constitution, of course, will be passed by our... You talk about a census, and obviously you've got some sort of indication of how many people are within your borders just from the referendum process. But there have been issues of citizenship and whether or not people should be attached to this new country, Southern Sudan, or whether they're free to move between North and South Sudan, where many people have their jobs outside of the region. How are you going to attract the human capital? There are two aspects to this. There are South Sudanese who were living in the North and non-Sudan were living in the South since 1956. We agreed that these people will have to be given some kind of choice. Of course, the North refused that they are given dual citizenship. We are working on that one. But on the average, the most important part, I think, it's the nomad tribes, that about 6 million people across our border. We have the longest border of 2,000 kilometers square. And these people will have to be managed in such a way that security concerns, issues of mobility are being handled. But for now, we are negotiating the post-referendum arrangement. One of them is citizenship. Okay, and do you get a sense that people, especially in the diaspora, are ready to come home and rebuild the country? Oh yes, before, the past 6 years has been the most difficult period because you are implementing an agreement that would, towards the end of it, either divide the country or unite it. So the sense of insecurity was more or less in the minds of so many people. But thank God, with the results that we have had now, then definitely our focus will be on the diaspora, because now they will be the one to build. And this explains why they overwhelmingly voted for the secession. Obviously, when people talk about Sudan, they talk about oil. It's almost synonymous. And the issue here is some kind of advancement on the revenue sharing agreement that already exists through the CPA. How are you going to get collaboration between North and South? We have agreed in principle with the North when it comes to the economic stuff. First of all, in the South, we don't have infrastructure for oil industry, which is the main South. So naturally, common sense put it that since we are landlocked, we will have to deal with those issues at a bilateral level, but also mindful of the fact that you will have to deal with the North, which has got this thing. So we have agreed in principle that there will have to be some kind of consortium which will have to deal with those people. Of course, the ownership of the oil, depending on which side of the border it is, definitely the South will get it all 100% oil side. But if there are oils on the border sides, those will be handled with. But that has not been a point of disagreement at all. We agreed on most of these. Obviously, I mean, the world is now on the quest for energy security, and we know from where we come from, there'd been a dwindling in investments in oil because of uncertainty politically in some of these countries. The costs of capital expenditure had risen and the price of oil wasn't attractive. It seems to be a lot of those factors have changed. The price of oil is at highs. It's attractive to move into the sector right now, and we've got these frontier markets in Africa. Is Sudan being looked at as one of them?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that, the first thing you must consider is that most oil companies and big oil majors have got very deep pockets, and they're forever looking for the best cost advantage when it comes to production. And if Sudan can provide that, then they invest. And it's obviously got to do with reserve levels, how much reserves and how quickly they can extract it, and what the lifespan of those oil refineries are. So certainly, South Sudan is an area that people are looking at, and as you know, there's already extraction happening. But I mean, this is a feel-good story.
Yeah.
This is now a country which have gone through the very worst of it, and it's now emerging on the other side. And let's face it, if you're going to try and build an African country, or any country for that matter, and you can see it's dire. There's huge amounts of poverty in this country at this stage. But if you're going to build this country, what better way to do it with than through oil?
Okay, capacity by way of reserves, 500,000 barrels per day. So it's not even optimum capacity in terms of what Sudan has as reserves, but there are huge problems. For instance, Southern Sudan may have the oil, but the production still happens in the north. The refining capacity doesn't exist. There's a lot that still needs to go into it.
In fact, one of the things that we are taking very seriously is how long will it take for South Sudan to have its own refineries and pipelines? On average, we have mapped out about 5 years to finish all this. The Chinese, when they built the current infrastructure, it took them literally 4 years to complete. And it was a relaxed time for them. But for us, we definitely need that one. But we are also aware that even if we have alternative routes like Djibouti or Kenya, as we are planning, definitely Northern Sudan will continue to be one of those routes that we'll take very seriously.
Has anybody evaluated the costs of reconstruction for Southern Sudan?
On average, we are talking it ranges between $15 billion US to $20 billion US dollars, but that will take you roughly about 10 years to finish everything. But if you want to do, let's say, roughly what we are looking for now, it will take us a short time to do it, and less money, in fact, given the competition that is going around.
All right, we also know that Southern Sudan, Kobe, has become fertile investment ground, particularly for a lot of Kenyan and Ugandan businesses. We know leading banks in Kenya are entering Sudan. The brewers are very interested in tapping into this untapped consumer market. The cement companies are very excited about Sudan because of the potential for the construction industry. But what are the risks that need to be considered? Because we keep on referring to political risks, but it seems as though there may also be capital risks of taking your money to Sudan, because you're also dealing with a country that's going to have to introduce possibly a new monetary system, a new currency, etc.
Yeah, sure. And obviously the rewards, if you're doing it as a globally diversified company, and this is one country that you're trying to get into relative to a much larger pie that you already have as a client base, the rewards can be fantastic in these kind of countries, and that's obviously what very large multinationals are after. Work it out this way: if you're Coca-Cola, let's at the margin, how are you going to grow in other markets if you're already everywhere? Whereas here's an opportunity that you can go into a country from the beginning, and you can now start, building a consumer base for yourselves. This is certainly something people are looking at. Obviously, the big first challenge is transportation and logistics, because how do you build something like that in a country where literally there's just been decimation? You literally have to start at the ground, and then obviously trying to get government and the new government to try and create the systems and the procedures in order to make investment friendly. And you got oil revenues? Well, that's a good news story.
Dr. Yeo, he's mentioned quite a few issues here. Logistics, obviously, because of the poor infrastructure that you referred to, a new untapped market. But the fact that Southern Sudan has to import everything has raised concerns that in the early days there's going to be a real challenge for inflation.
In fact, one of the number one priorities actually is the infrastructure building, the roads that link us with the rest of the country or where the markets are. And we have already took this as a serious, a commission has been built, and in fact we are looking towards the countries like South Africa and others to come and sit with us to say, how long does it take? Our estimate that within the next 2 years, already that we have linked ourselves with the East African countries, that is done. But what is the interstate within South Sudan that we are working on now? But we have already put in place structures that we feel are doable.
But what about the inflationary concerns? The fact that still, even if people are investing, they're bringing in everything from outside and you've got to pay people wages. And there have already been concerns that maybe the government of Southern Sudan needs to curb its wage bill. Too many people depend on existing funds for ex-combatants, etc.
At this stage now, one of the priorities, number 2, that we have is how do we deal with the issues of governance? Is the current political system, the federal system we have we worked it out or not? Because if you don't work it out, most likely you'll have a lot of bureaucracy, and much of the money will go to those people. So
And
we are
finally,
instructing the government.
The currency, are you still going to stick to the current system of the Sudanese pound? Southern Sudan, Northern Sudan says it might move to the dinar.
We say that we keep, we agreed in principle that no surprises. We will definitely have to agree on how we disengage, and we have already put in place structures that will sort this thing out. But I think there will be no much change to what we already have.